I challenged myself to make a cinematic render in under 1 hour, using only free assets and add-ons to really see if art direction matters more than the tools. The rules are simple: 1 hour, 0 budget, and the final image has to look somewhat cinematic by the end with clear storytelling. Let's see how it goes. So my plan was to split the hour into 4 15-minute chunks for asset creation, blockout and composition, lighting and rendering, and finally post-processing. And that's when I realized that I had way less time than I had initially thought. But no time to waste, so I hit start. Okay, so I was watching this Instagram reel yesterday about Hachiko, a pet dog who would always wait at the bus station for his owner to come back from work, but the owner had suddenly passed and the dog didn't know about it, and he just kept waiting for years for his owner to come back until he finally passed away too. And this really touched my heart, and I think I want to do something similar for this scene as well. Maybe like a dog sleeping near his late owner's grave. That could be really powerful if I can pull it off. Now, I might be doing this under an hour, but if you want to learn how to create cinematic 3D scenes like this without the unnecessary pressure, I recently launched a group mentorship program called the Dream Render Workshop. It's an 8-week project-based program where I help artists like you take your idea and turn them into something meaningful with practical technical knowledge, storytelling, and art direction at the core. You'll hear more about it towards the end of this video, but if you're curious now, the link is in the description and the pinned comment. With the concept locked in, I jumped straight into Sketchfab and started looking for models. I found this sleeping dog 3D scan that looked incredible, and after some digging, no pun intended, I found a headstone that matched the mood. These two alone didn't feel enough to convey the story, and I needed something more. Something that clarifies the relationship between the dog and his owner. So I figured I could use a toy bone and a tennis ball. I also wanted a withered bouquet of flowers too, to signify the passing of time, but this was all I could find, so I had to settle for an ordinary bunch. I used the Sketchfab Blender add-on to import them quickly by pasting the curated link straight in. I wasn't worried about the scale just yet, just wanted to get everything in and start roughing out the layout. I cleaned up a bit of the unnecessary geometry, merged a few objects, and mostly just focused on getting things into place. And just like that, the first 15 minutes were gone. Yeah, this is gonna be way harder than I thought. So now it was time to lock in for real. I scaled the gravestone and dog first and used them as the base to size everything else. It's important to get your scale as close to real world sizes as possible for the most accurate lighting and simulations. Not that it mattered a lot for this scene, but it's good practice. Anyway, I framed up the shot early so I could work around the camera rather than building aimlessly. Also, I switched to a wider aspect ratio to get that cinematic framing with the black bars. It's literally the easiest way to make something look serious. I couldn't afford to spend much time on set dressing because I wanted to focus on the lighting next. Thanks to the easy HDRI add-on, I could cycle through my environment HDRIs way faster than manually swapping them in the node editor. That really helped me test the moods quickly and lock in a base lighting setup to build on. But then, of course, something had to go wrong. The materials on the dog and the bouquet were all emissive for some reason. They just looked flat. And the models had multiple different material slots, so I had to swap each of the shader setups individually with a principal shader. That ate up a few precious minutes for no good reason and honestly made my anxiety spike a little. If you're new to Blender's shader editor, troubleshooting random issues that pop up like this can derail you for hours. That's why for this video, I've partnered with Skillshare, the largest online learning community for creatives with classes on any topic you can think of for any skill level. They also offer curated learning paths like their Build 3D Models and Animations with Blender by Derek Elliott that walk you step by step through everything from designing your first object in Blender to simulations and camera animations. It's all project-based, so you actually build real scenes while you learn alongside thousands of other students and can share it with everyone to get feedback once you complete the class. Now the best part is that the first 500 people to use my link in the description will receive a 1-month free trial of Skillshare. So go ahead and get started today. Now once the materials were finally sorted, I moved on to the ground vegetation. The free Biome Reader add-on I used came with some really high quality grass assets and scatter presets, so adding those was just a couple of clicks. I just had to scale things down, randomize the seeds, and that was enough for now. It also had some basic tree models that I could throw in the background. I just didn't have the time to build a full forest, so I instead tried to just close off the world with just enough visual clutter to make it feel believable. Duplicating them manually was way too slow, so I used the free clicker add-on, just selected a tree and clicked wherever I wanted instances to appear. From the camera view, I adjusted the heights to create some natural leading lines pointing towards the gravestone. When you align the areas around your focal point to lead into it, it really helps build a stronger composition and ensures that the viewer's eyes do not wander anywhere else. I had to keep it low-key to still look natural, but I think it works fine. The timer went off again in the middle of all of this, but I definitely kept going for a few more minutes because there was no way I was half-assing this bit. Even with all this, the focal point, that is the dog and the gravestone, wasn't getting enough attention. The HDRI alone wasn't cutting it, and I didn't have the time to go HDRI shopping again, so I faked the lighting with area lamps instead. I was stupid enough to work directly in cycles, that too with particles still turned on, so everything slowed to a crawl. But I still managed to drop in an area light that actually brought focus to the dog by positioning it in a way that highlights the silhouette of the dog and a bit of his face with a broader and more diffuse lighting on the stone. And that made a huge difference. I added 2 soft fill lights in the background to gently light the trees with the same color as the key light, just enough to make the environment feel more grounded without pulling attention. The reason I wanted to go for this golden hour look is because I wanted to evoke this bittersweet warmth instead of the typical creepy graveyard vibe. So the story stays all about the dog's quiet loyalty. I want to leave enough time for post-processing because that's where everything really comes together. So I wrapped up the layout with a few more foreground details and hit render. The render took about a minute and a half, which is not super ideal. But anyway, I saved it as an OpenEXR file to have greater control in post. For post-processing, I use Photoshop, which technically breaks the only free tools rule, but I could have done the same thing using something like GIMP, but I just didn't have them installed and wasn't about to waste time downloading them mid-challenge. Anyway, first I dropped in a sky image from my old files, blurred it out a bit, then I used camera raw filter on the render to tweak the colors, contrast, etc., and then some quick additional details like adding a soft glow on the right, etc. You know the drill. Just subtle things to unify the shot. And with a few seconds left on the clock, I hit export. Alright, moment of truth. So here it is, the final render. And honestly, I'm pretty happy with how far it got in just an hour. That said, looking back at it now, there are definitely a few things I would like to change. For starters, the dog kind of looks dead. Like not peacefully sleeping or anything, just gone, which wasn't exactly the intention, but in a weird way, it does kind of trace back to the Hachiko story, so maybe it works. Still, I think a different pose or just better toy placement could have really sold emotion more clearly. Something that felt like the dog was waiting and not just lifeless. And that could have been done by simply opening the eyes a little bit. I also really wish I had more background separation. A bit of fog or even just some subtle volumetrics would have added a lot of depth to the render and made the space feel more layered. The current scene works, but there's a disconnect between the main subject and the rest of the world. A few more gravestones in the back or a fence around the area could have grounded the scene and made it feel more intentional. Even in terms of the shot, I think it gave a little too much visual weight to the gravestone. The dog ended up feeling like a side character in its own story. Maybe a tighter crop or a different camera angle could have shifted the focus where it was supposed to be. But again, all of this is the kind of stuff that you only really see after the fact. And it's also exactly the stuff that takes way more than just an hour to get right. I'd love to hear your thoughts on how you'd improve this scene, so feel free to leave a comment. What this experiment really showed me is that the heavy lifting that you do when building a new render is fast and front-loaded. Blocking everything out, placing things, roughing in the lights, that's the easy part. But the emotion, the story, the subtle things that make a piece feel real, those are the details that take infinitely longer. And I think that's the whole point of art. If you want to go deeper and not just into the technical stuff, but also into the cinematic storytelling and the emotional impact behind your renders, that's exactly what we focus on in the Dream Render workshop. I'll work with you and a small group of your peers over 8 weeks to help you build your dream render. And that could be a still render, a 3-story panel, or even a short animation, just something that you're really proud of by the end. If you're ready to take your storytelling to the next level and create your best work yet, check the description or the pinned comment. I would love to have you there. The presale is live and the program is currently at the lowest price it's ever going to be. Now, visual storytelling is something the Oscar-winning movie Flow does really well, surprisingly made entirely in Blender. Watch this video next where I break down its simple 4-step storytelling framework so you can take your renders from looking just nice to truly moving people. See you there.